There, humans. Welcome to Read to Me, Matt Dunn. I'm Matt Dunn, and this is Gomorrah, and I'm going to read to you. We're reading Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. We are on Chapter 18, Part 3. It's been quite some time since Part 2, right? A whole 24 hours. Yeah, it's pretty good. I'm excited to see what happens. I think Darcy, sorry, Mr. Darcy, is trying to establish a conversation, or I should say interaction with Elizabeth. She's not having it. She clearly did not have it. She was just like, I don't care. I know I like books, and I know you like books, but dude, don't fucking talk to books about me, and I will not be. She's gonna punch him. That's what she's gonna do. I don't remember what happened, but what does he say of the living, right? He does not exactly recollect the circumstances, though he has heard them from Mr. Darcy more than once, but he believes that it was left to him conditionally only. Conditionally. I have not a doubt of Mr. Bingley's sincerity, said Elizabeth warmly, but you must excuse my not being convinced by assurance only. Mr. Bingley's defense of his friend was a very able one, I dare say, but since he is acquainted with several parts of the story and has learnt the rest from that friend himself, I shall venture still to think of both gentlemen as I did before. She then changed the discourse to one more gratifying to each, on which there could be no difference of settlement. Elizabeth listened, and with delight to the happy, though modest hopes which Jane entertained of Bingley's regard, and said all in her power to heighten her confidence in it. Anyway, on their being joined by Mr. Bingley himself, Elizabeth withdrew to Miss Lucas, to whose inquiry after the pleasantness of her last partner she had scarcely replied, before Mr. Collins came up to them and told her with great exultation that he had just been so fortunate as to make a most important discovery. Yo, this, Mr. Collins, I watched the movie, a long time ago, so I'm kind of vaguely putting characters together. I actually don't know what Mr. Darcy looks like, which is great because I hate picturing the people in the movie, especially Elizabeth, because I know who Elizabeth looks like in the movie, but I'm not picturing the Keira Knightley. Right? I think that was who she was playing. But it's pretty cool. Fresh. It's like Elizabeth, to me, is this girl. It just doesn't look like Keira Knightley. Not at all. Not at all. And then the Mr. Darcy looks like probably the guy from Shaun of the Dead. Not the main guy, but Pete. I don't know. It doesn't really work out. Maybe with a smaller forehead. Now, since I've lost my spot, I will continue to make up words until I've found my spot. And, today is the day of all days, and something and something, I have found out, said he, by a singular accident that there is now in the room a near relation of my patroness. I happened to overhear the gentleman himself mentioning to the young lady who does the honors of this house the name of his cousin Miss de Boer, and of her mother, Lady Catherine. Oh, how wonderful these sort of things occur. Golly, who would have thought of my meeting with perhaps a nephew of Lady Catherine de Boer in this assembly? Motherfuck, he's throwing this party. Did you not know? I am most thankful that the discovery is made in time for me to pay my respect to him, which I am now going to do. And trust he will excuse my not having done it before. My total ignorance of the connection must plead my apology. You are not going to introduce yourself to Mr. Darcy? Indeed I am. I shall entreat his pardon for not having done it earlier. I believe him to be Lady Catherine's nephew. It will be in my power to assure him that her ladyship was quite well yesterday se'night. Se'night. Yesterday's se'night. Alright, seriously, I have to show you this one. You guys might know it. Can you get that? Yeah, se'night. She was quite well yesterday. Se'night. Yeah, right? Se'night. Se'night. Top of the se'night. Elizabeth tried hard to dissuade him from such a scheme, assuring him that Mr. Darcy would consider his addressing him without introduction as an impertinent freedom rather than a compliment to his aunt, that it was not in the least necessary there should be any notice on either side, and that if it were, it must belong to Mr. Darcy, the superior in consequence, to begin the acquaintance. Mr. Collins listened to her with the determined air of following his own inclination. Ho, ho, ho. He listened to her knowing he's not going to listen to her. Yeah, blah, 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 blah. I get what you're saying. Shut the fuck up. I have to introduce myself to him because I am a man. I shall show him my manhood. He listened with the intent of something following her. Oh, okay. I lost it. And when she ceased speaking, replied thus: My dear Miss Elizabeth, I have the highest opinion in the world of your excellent judgment in all matters within the scope of your understanding. But permit me to say that there must be a wide difference between the established forms of ceremony amongst the laity, and those which regulate the clergy. For, give me leave to observe that I consider the clerical office as equal in point of dignity with the highest rank in the kingdom, provided that a proper humility of behavior is at the same time maintained. What? Yeah. Excuse me. You must therefore allow me to follow the dictates of my conscience on this occasion, which leads me to perform that I look on as a point of duty. Pardon me for neglecting to profit by your advice, which on every subject shall be my constant guide, though in case before us I consider myself more fitted by education and habitual studies to decide on what is right than a young lady like yourself. And with a low bow he left her to attack Mr. Darcy, whose reception of his advances she eagerly watched, and whose astonishment at being so addressed was very evident. Her cousin prefaced his speech with a solemn bow. He made a bowel movement with a sudden solemn bow, and though she could not hear a word of it, she felt as if hearing it all, and saw in the motion of his lips the words apology, Hunsford, and Lady Catherine de Bourgh. It vexed her to see him expose himself to such a man. Mr. Darcy was eyeing him with an unrestrained wonder, and when at last Mr. Collins allowed him time to speak, replied with an air of distant civility. Mr. Collins, however, was not discouraged from speaking again, and Mr. Darcy's contempt seemed abundantly increasing with the length of his second speech, and at the end of it he only made him a slight bow and moved another way. Mr. Collins then returned to Elizabeth. "I have no reason, I assure you," said he, "to be dissatisfied with my reception. Mr. Darcy seemed much pleased with the attention. He answered me with the utmost civility, and even paid me the compliment of saying that he was so well convinced of Lady Catherine's discernment as to be certain she could never bestow a favour unworthily. It was really a very handsome thought. Upon the whole, I am much pleased with him." Okay, as Elizabeth had no longer any interest of her own to pursue, she turned her attention almost entirely to her sister and Mr. Bingley, and the train of agreeable reflections which her observations gave birth to made her perhaps almost as happy as Jane. She saw her in idea settled in that very house, in all the felicity which a marriage of true affection could bestow, and she felt capable, under such circumstances, of endeavouring even to like Bingley's two sisters. Her mother's thoughts, she plainly saw, were bent the same way, and she determined not to venture near her, lest she might hear too much. When they sat down to supper, therefore, she considered it a most unlucky perverseness. I can't believe I fucked that word up. Which placed them within one of each other, and deeply was she vexed to find that her mother was talking to that one person, parentheses, Lady Lucas, end parentheses, freely, openly, and of nothing else but of her expectations that Jane would be soon married to Mr. Bingley. It was an animating subject, and Mrs. Bennet seemed incapable of fatigue while enumerating the advantages of the match. His being such a charming young man and so rich, and living but 3 miles from them, were the first points of self-gratulations. And then it was such a comfort to think how fond the two sisters were of Jane, but not very much of Elizabeth, I'm sure. And to be certain that they must desire the connection as much as she could do. It was, moreover, such a promising thing for her younger daughters, as Jane's marrying so greatly must throw them in the way of other rich men. And lastly, it was so pleasant at her time of life to be able to consign her single daughters to the care of their sisters, that she might not be obliged to go into company more than she liked. It was necessary to make this circumstance a matter of pleasure, because on such occasions it is the etiquette. But no one was less likely than Mrs. Bennet to find comfort in staying at home at any period of her life. She concluded with many good wishes that Lady Lucas might soon be equally fortunate, though evidently and triumphantly believing there was no chance of it. No chance indeed. What is it with Elizabeth and this Mr. Darcy? She's acting all up front or she's putting up a front. She's putting up that front barrier. And Mr. Darcy is definitely seems interested in her. Intrigued, maybe. Maybe he's going to keep coming after her. Maybe he is going to come after her. Not in a vicious way, like he's going to come after her. He has a lot of money and a lot of connections. He can probably go after anybody he wants and grab them and put them in a room somewhere and then put a TV in that room and then make them watch TV. And then they'll be like, what the fuck is this magic box? Because this is the 18th century. Kind of like that, I guess. Anyway, I just probably ruined all of my subscriber points there. If you like what you see and you want me to keep reading, please check out some more of my videos. Comment down below if you want to say hey or nay. Give me a thumbs up if you like. Give me a thumbs down if you don't. And subscribe with the button over yonder. Thanks. I'll see you tomorrow.